Hi, thanks so much for joining me on the Listen Up Girl podcast. This is your daily LGBTQ plus news podcast. I'm your host, Zach Randles-Friedman, and today is Thursday, June 18th, 2026. We are deep into Pride Month, and today the stories run the full range. From a baseball league quietly drawing a line in the sand, to a national park ranger who lost a job over a flag, to a Florida city forced to cancel a memorial before it was ever built. We've got a hate crime in a couple is lucky to have survived, a lawsuit that tells you everything about where the anti-trans playbook is heading, and a piece of good news to send you out the door. We have 6 stories today in total, so let's get into it. First, baseball picks aside, and 2 of them. We're starting on the baseball diamond today because Major League Baseball is having a Pride Month it did not ask for. Tonight, the Texas Rangers will do something that makes them stand alone in the entire league. The Rangers are the only one of the 30 major baseball league teams that has never held a Pride Night. And tonight, instead, they are hosting a faith and family night where players talk about their religious beliefs. Every other franchise has found a way to welcome LGBTQ plus fans into the baseball park at least once. The Rangers, year after year, have chosen not to. And in 2026, the political winds blowing the way they are, that choice lands even louder. Global Project Against Hate and Extremism. But the bigger baseball story this week came out of San Francisco, a city you would not expect to be the center of Pride controversy. During the Giants' annual Pride Night at Oracle Park last Friday, pitchers Landen Roupp, JT Brubaker, and Ryan Walker were seen writing Bible verses, Genesis 9:12 through 16, on their rainbow-themed caps. The passage is about the rainbow as a sign of God's covenant. A 4th pitcher, Sam Hentges, declined to wear the pride cap altogether. The message was clear. A public reframing of the rainbow on Pride Night on a pride cap is beyond ridiculous. Sid Ziegler, the co-founder of Outsports, called the display disgraceful, arguing the players had taken a widely recognized symbol of LGBTQ plus pride and rewritten its meaning. And then the league stepped in. MLB warned the players that writing on their cap violates uniform rules, and they could face penalties for future violations, calling the enforcement consistent with normal practice. Which, of course, is exactly where this stops a sports story and becomes a culture war story. On Tuesday, a Republican Senator Josh Hawley fired off a letter to the MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred, accusing baseball of a pattern of discrimination against players who profess their Christian faith. A United States Senator writing official letters over a hat. Here's what I'll leave you with. Nobody stopped these players from believing anything. The rule against writing in uniforms applies to everyone equally. But the speed which a personal protest at a Pride event became a senator's crusade tells you how badly people want our one night at the ballpark to be about anything other than us. Next, fired over a flag and not backing down. Story 2 takes us to Yosemite and a fight that a judge just tried to end and failed. You remember the image from last year, a 55-foot transgender pride flag hung dramatically from El Capitan, the granite face that towers over Yosemite Valley. The person behind the protest, Dr. S.J. Joslin, a non-binary park ranger, was later fired. They sued, arguing the termination was retaliation for protected expression. This week, a judge dismissed the lawsuit. On paper, a loss, but Joslin is framing it as anything but a finish line. This isn't a win for the federal government, Joslin insisted, signaling they are not done fighting. I want you to sit with this for a second because it's more about that than a single ranger. The federal government has spent the last year plus systematically pulling our visibility out of public spaces. The flags, the crosswalks, the display, the language on government websites. And when a worker pushes back, the message being sent is that there's a price for that. A dismissed lawsuit is meant to be a deterrent. It's meant to make the next person think twice before they hang a flag, before they say something, before they make themselves visible at work. So when someone loses in court and says out loud, "I'm not done," that matters. Because the entire strategy depends on us getting quiet. Joslin is refusing to get quiet. And that refusal is its own kind of victory, even on a day the gavel came down the wrong way. Next, a memorial canceled before it was even built. Our third story is one of the most quietly devastating things I've covered all month, and it comes out of Florida, of course. If you've been with me this Pride season, you know about the rainbow crosswalks that have been scrubbed off the streets across the country under the anti-DEI directives. One Florida city, after losing its rainbow crosswalks, planned and honor its community a different way, a rainbow arch, a permanent public installation, something that could simply not be repaved. This week, that city faced a Scrape the Rainbow Arc project under Governor Ron DeSantis' anti-DEI law. The very project that was meant to replace the rainbow crosswalks DeSantis had already forced the city to remove. Think about the cruelty of the sequence there. First, the crosswalk comes up, then the community says, fine, we'll build something else. Then something else is killed by the same law. This is not about a traffic pain. This is about a deliberate campaign. The Orange Convicted Felons Administration is nationally and DeSantis at the state level to make sure there is no surface, no arc, no symbol, no acknowledgement that we exist in public shared spaces. And in Florida, especially where the memorial of Pulse lives in the pavement, erasing those tributes isn't neutral. It's a choice about whose grief is allowed to be visible. The arc is gone before it was even put up, but the community that wanted it is still there. And the impulse to memorialize, to mark, to say we are here and we are here, no law has figured out how to repave that. Next story is I thought I was going to die. So a hard one now and an important one. A gay couple in a town survived a brutal beating. And one of the men who described himself as a conservative said, I literally thought I was going to die. I want to underline that detail because it cuts through so much of the noise. This was not someone who saw himself as a political target. This was a man living his ordinary life who, in a moment of violence, learned that to the people attacking him, his politics didn't matter. His vote didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was who he loved. That's the thing about anti-LGBTQ plus violence, that the statistics sometimes flatten out. It doesn't check your registration. It doesn't check how you feel about any given issue. The rhetoric that has been escalating for years, the language calling us dangerous, calling us groomers, treating us our resistance as a debate, it doesn't stay rhetoric. It travels, it lands on actual bodies in actual towns, and it lands on people across the entire political spectrum, including people who thought they were safe on the safe side of it. If you're listening today and a story like this makes your chest tighten, I understand. Take care of yourself, check on the people you love, and know your surroundings. But also know this, we will survive these things, and we keep telling each other about them precisely so no one goes through them feeling alone. That's why listening to my news every day is so important, so you're informed about what's happening in our community. Next, a lawsuit that shows you the playbook. Story 5 is one to pay close attention to because it's a preview of a tactic we're going to see a lot more of. A high school wrestler has filed a lawsuit alleging sexual assault after finding out that an opponent was transgender. And multiple wrestling experts, along with anti-trans commentators, reviewing the footage, say the video match shows no evidence of any assault. So let me say that clearly. The experts looking at the actual video, people who know what a wrestling match looks like, do not see an assault. They see a wrestling match. What changed was not the contact on the mat. What changed was the discovery afterwards that the opponent was transgender. And in that retelling, the ordinary athlete contest gets recast as a crime. This is the playbook, and it's worth naming. Take a transgender person simply existing in normal space, a locker room, a sports team, a bathroom, a wrestling mat, and reframe their presence itself as a kind of violence against everyone around them. It turns participation into a threat. It turns a teenager competing in a sport into a defendant. It also is designed to make a legally and socially radioactive for any trans kid to do the most ordinary thing in the world, play. Watch this case, not because the allegation holds up, the people who say it doesn't, but because the strategy behind this is going to be copied. And the better we understand it now, the harder it will be to fall later. Next, and now something good. I always want to leave you with proof that we're still building, still creating, and still celebrating, even now. And today that proof is in Washington, D.C. At the Smithsonian's National Museum of African Art, there's a free exposition running through August 23rd called Here, Pride and Belonging in African Art. Something LGBTQ plus artists and visual art practitioners from across the African continent. And this evening, June 18th from 5 to 6, the museum is hosting a free, moderated panel discussion with its curator and featured artist. I love this story for what it represents. At a moment when so much energy is being spent trying to erase us from public spaces, here is the Smithsonian Museum, a national museum, putting queer African artists at the center, in their own words, for free for anyone who walks in the door. That is visibility, and that can't be repaved away. That's our history and our present hung on the wall and given a microphone. So if you were anywhere near DC tonight, go. And if you're not, sit with the fact that it's happening anyway. Erasure is loud, but creation is relentless. And we have always outcreated people trying to make us disappear. So that is our episode for today on Thursday, June 18th. If this podcast resonated with you and you think somebody else should hear it, please share it with them. Also, please go to the podcast platform that you're listening on this to and leave a comment and a rating, because the more ratings I get, the more people will hear this in news. And as you can see, this news is so important for everyone to hear and to stay informed. Thanks so much for listening. I'll be back tomorrow with more LGBTQ plus news.